Mama, I can only describe this film as garbage. I watched this film and thought to myself, God has abandoned lesbian cinema. Oh my god, we get it. You listen to Stevie Nicks. I miss who I was before I watched this film. She was full of sunshine and hope. No, she's always been withered. Ah yes, the classic lesbians on the run with a briefcase of phallic items which happen to be incredibly high value, which they are so in awe of and so fascinated by they can't help but use on themselves and on each other. That doesn't sound like a male fantasy at all. No insecure messaging about male worth being projected onto lesbians here. Carry on, everyone. I wonder if this film is related to the fact that Ethan Cohen's wife sleeps with other women. Things I wish I didn't know, but unfortunately learned when I was doing the bare minimum research for this review. They put it out there very publicly. For what reason? I do not know, children. I do not know. I mean, look, who am I to judge? Am I Jesus? No, I just have a similar haircut. Hi guys, welcome to a video, and in today's video, I'm just going to be reviewing the film Drive Away Dolls. Oh, I wish it would drive away straight off of a cliff. And I won't be attending any funerals unless there are some rich widowed women there. Sprinkle, sprinkle. If you're not familiar with Drive Away Dolls, it follows Jamie, an uninhabited free spirit, bemoaning yet another breakup with a girlfriend, and her demure friend Marion, who desperately needs to loosen up. In search of a fresh start, the two embark on an impromptu road trip to Tallahassee, but things quickly go awry when they cross paths with a group of inept criminals along the way. As a heads up, this video will contain spoilers, so if you've not seen the film, oh how I envy you, and you have been warned. Now, I spoke about this film a while ago in my video about this year's upcoming lesbian film releases. The year is 2024 for those of you watching this in the future. Hello, robot ladies. And I believe I said that from the trailer this film very much looked like the product of a straight man including lesbians in his work to try and make it more edgy or relevant to a changing social climate and therefore changing wallets. But also maybe that I would be proved wrong and I shouldn't really be making preconceived notions about somebody's work based on who they are as a person. However, it turns out I was right to be prejudiced. Kids, sometimes prejudices, they are correct. I'm joking. That said, I honestly did go into this film with an open mind. I know some people might not believe that, but it's true. Like, from the trailer, I wasn't expecting to be blown away by this film, but I certainly wasn't expecting to want to have it scrubbed from my memory either. Like, it is a shock to me just how awful this film is. So let's get into it. I think I'll start with the precious few positives that this film has to offer. It's a relatively short production, so you will suffer, but not for long. Margaret Qualley is a beautiful, handsome fairy prince heartthrob. And seeing a beautiful, handsome fairy prince heartthrob just simply existing on screen is a small amount of compensation for a film which is otherwise a punishment for the fact that I have the ability to comprehend. I thought the costume design for the lesbian characters in this film was very on point. Shout out to Peggy Schnitzer who did the costume design for this film because she really understood the assignment. Jamie really looked good. She did. Beanie Feldstein also offers a small life craft of comic relief in a sea of unfunny dialogue. She's a bit like Melissa McCarthy in the way that she has the ability to take unfunny scripts and actually make them amusing. I enjoy her on-screen presence. And lastly, none of the lesbian characters in this film die. I do have to give this film credit for managing to mostly avoid the numerous negative tropes and cliches that have haunted lesbian cinema for decades. Mostly. Now, onto my 3.5 pages of criticism. So, firstly, the dialogue throughout the entirety of this film was painful, unamusing, and ill-paced. And given that this film is a comedy, that's not great. I understand that they were going for a more dry and awkward approach to humour in the script, kind of similar to a production like Bottoms, but unlike Bottoms, the delivery of jokes and general dialogue in Drive Away Dolls is so wooden and asinine that it just doesn't work. I do grant that humour is subjective, but even still, the sex jokes or references to body parts were really juvenile and repetitive. I mean, the humour in this film seemed to rely almost entirely on people finding certain body parts or finding the fact that people have sex funny. And most people who are past the age of 12 generally have a bit more of a developed comedic taste. I think even if that is your kind of comedy, surely the jokes still need to be witty and well timed, of which they are neither in this film. The thing is, if this film had actually been funny, its shortcomings would have been much more forgivable. I mean, if a film's funny, it can get away with almost anything. Moving on to the character of Jamie, she very much felt like a caricature of a lesbian or a straight person's preconceived notion of what a lesbian is. There were a lot of basic stereotypes applied to both her and Marion. For example, Jamie's whole personality was that she sleeps with women, and she consistently brings this up to people upon first meeting them. It was like watching a really badly written, low IQ version of Shane from The L Word. You know, they don't know any men, they're horrified by the traditional nuclear family. There's the occasional line thrown out about the patriarchy or how Henry James is white and uptight. Yeah, down with the patriarchy in a lesbian film directed and co-written by a man. Sure thing. It was just like somebody took a bunch of the most basic stereotypes, dumbed them down, and then applied them to two lesbian characters, whilst making them spout cliche phrases like some shitty stereotype jukebox.
I think really the issue is not so much that the characters consist of basic stereotypes. It's that those stereotypes were applied in such an unironic and unintelligent way that it left the characters feeling two-dimensional and reductive.
The thing is, this poor characterization wasn't even exclusive to the lesbian characters. Even the male characters in this film felt very forced and bizarre.
For example, you have Flint, who I'm guessing the whole point of his character was to parody the traditional conservative, socially stunted man type. And he had lines such as, "This place is a pigsty, why don't you get a girl in?" And, "Since when do women curse like that?" Which sounds like something Gaston from Beauty and the Beast might say. And then you have Arliss with his incessant preaching to Flint about how he's superior because, you know, he's advanced beyond a hulking caveman and he's hashtag not like other men, which became tired real quick.
The thing is, I do understand that the male characters are supposed to be inept and they're supposed to be parodies of certain types of men, but because their characterization was so one note, and again, the dialogue was unamusing and it was juvenile,
they came across as ridiculous, and not ridiculous in an amusing way, which also happened to provide commentary on sexism and machismo, but ridiculous in a childish and monotonous way. I actually came across an interview that Trisha Cook and Ethan Coen did, where they offer some context as to why the male characters are written in the way that they are. It says, "I kind of represent the queer world," Cook says. "All of the bumbling men in the movie and all of the caper stuff definitely comes from Ethan's mind. Trisha's queer and sweet and I'm straight and stupid," Coen adds. "That could be the slogan of the movie, straight and stupid. Me and Joel couldn't do that because we're both straight and stupid." Okay, so firstly, there's no correlation between sexuality and intelligence. That was a very odd thing to say. And secondly, it doesn't matter if one man or 10 men direct and write a lesbian film, it will be a product of the male gaze and represent a form of exploitation either way. But in relation to the whole bumbling and stupid straight male characters, I don't think purposefully putting heterosexual men down or portraying them as idiots actually lifts lesbians up or makes lesbians look better. And if that is what they were going for in the film, I don't understand why they also made one of the main lesbian characters incredibly stupid and bumbling also. Surely that contradicts what's being said in this interview.
That interview is very telling as to why this film is the way it is. That's all I'm gonna say. Now, the word dyke also consistently crops up in this film, and for those who don't know, this film was also originally called Drive Away Dykes, not Drive Away Dolls. And I personally don't take issue with the word dyke. It doesn't really offend me. But I know some lesbians do, which is valid, because of course it is a word that has been hurled at them. I mean, it's been hurled at me too, in a derogatory way. And some lesbians probably have some trauma around that word. They do. And what's interesting is neither Ethan Coen or his wife Trisha Cook are homosexual women.
Ethan Coen is a heterosexual man and Trisha Cook, who he is married to, is a bisexual woman who is in the safety blanket of a heterosexual marriage with him. So, as a creative team, it's questionable that they would repeatedly use a lesbian slur in their work, as though it's a fun and quirky thing and not a word which has very real negative connotations. For a lot of lesbians and even bisexual women in same-sex relationships in real life. Especially considering the production that they've created and are lining their own pockets off of is already exploitative of lesbian sexuality and identity.
Just imagine if Alice Osman called Heartstoppers the F-slur. She would be ripped to shreds. She would be absolutely ripped to shreds. But for some reason with this film, it's quirky. I understand that it's not necessarily coming from a hateful place. I don't think they deserve to be chased out of town with torches and pitchforks. But at the same time, it just doesn't really sit right. You know what I mean? It felt more like appropriation than it did empowerment. The other thing which really stood out to me in this production is just how incredibly phallic-centric it is, which is an odd choice for a lesbian film. I think it would have been less bizarre had Jamie or Marion been bisexual, appropriate even, but they're lesbians. So, choices.
And it wasn't just the props, the narrative and the dialogue that contributed to this ongoing phallic-centric theme in the film, but the cinematography too. It was very much deliberate. I mean, if you really lay it out, the narrative of Drive Away Dolls consists of two lesbians on the run with phallic items of high value that they then become sexually enthralled by. Think about the implication and messaging of a male appendage being of high value and sexually irresistible to lesbians. I know some people will think, oh, it's not that deep, you know, it's supposed to be a comedy, but like I said, this theme was very much deliberate and ongoing throughout the entire film. There was really no escape from it, much like in real life. To be honest, Drive Away Dolls came across to me as having been created by people who can't fathom a sexuality which doesn't centre around men. I don't know if this film was Ethan Coen projecting his own sexuality onto lesbians. I don't know if it was Trisha Cook projecting her own bisexuality onto lesbians. I don't know if it's all of the above, but any way you look at the messaging in this film, it's reductive and it's vile.
I think the worst part of this film by far for me was the basement kissing scene. There was something so gratuitous and exploitative about it that when I was watching it, I felt physically sick. Honestly, this might sound over the top, but there was something kind of almost adult film-esque about that scene. Probably because it very much felt like a male fantasy of what girls get up to at a sleepover or something like that. It was truly disgusting.
In terms of Jamie and Marian's relationship, I don't think they had that much chemistry, if I'm honest. But they weren't an awkward pairing either, and I could see that both actors were doing their best to try and provide some emotional nuance in their characters and form a connection to one another. It certainly didn't feel like two straight women kissing .jpeg. But like with everything else in this film, the writing ruined a lot of the potential of both of the characters and their relationship, which is a shame. The writing for Jamie's character is very vague and one note. Her whole personality is that she's A, stupid, and B, obsessed with sleeping with women. She's established as a cheater very early on. Marian, on the other hand, is very uptight, intellectual, and cautious. I just have a hard time believing that there wouldn't be problems further down the road in that relationship, which kind of made it hard to get into. I know that there was a crumb of character development with Jamie choosing not to sleep around after she'd kissed Marian, and that showed the audience that she changed her ways, but I mean, look, honestly, the poor writing and characterization and phallic pandering kind of ruined the relationship between Jamie and Marian for me, which is a shame because Margaret Qualley playing a lesbian is a gift that should be cherished. But unfortunately, that gift was dropped on the floor and then steamrolled over.
Even if I take all of my personal grievances out of the equation and I just look at Drive Away Dolls as purely and simply a piece of entertainment and nothing more, it's still a subpar production at best. The plot is extremely weak and childish, the characters are all two-dimensional, the dialogue is unwitty and repetitive, and the visual and editing choices that were made really gave the impression that the film was desperately trying to appear as artistically interesting and creatively edgy as possible. Those trippy acid scenes in particular felt very cheap and tedious.
I am aware that this film was supposed to be reminiscent of sexploitation cinema from the 1970s, which explains, not excuses, some of the awful visual choices. But the social and cinematic landscape of the 1970s is very different to what it is today. And whilst sexploitation cinema is something that can be fun to look back on, has a certain nostalgic charm even, it's fun because it's a product of its time, and it's not something that should be recreated and seriously expected to land, either artistically or socially, in today's cultural climate. If you purposefully make a film that is cheap and cringy, don't be surprised that people dismiss it as nothing more than cheap and cringy.
I think the worst part of all of this is Ethan Coen and Trisha Cook have threatened to make more of these lesbian films because apparently the lesbian community has not suffered enough.
I really get the feeling that they thought Drive Away Dolls was fresh, woke, and innovative. And actually, it's just reductive, exploitative, and lame as
Peggy is the only person who worked on this film who cares about lesbians.
So I wish Peggy and Peggy alone a very pleasant evening.
Overall, Drive Away Dolls is one of the worst lesbian films that I've ever seen, and that's an hour and a half of my life that I'll never see again. I could have spent that time staring at a blank wall. I could have spent that time having a little power nap. I could have spent that time fantasizing about Katie O'Brien holding me in those beautiful arms of hers. Okay guys, if you've seen Drive Away Dolls, let me know your thoughts on it down in the comments section below. Don't forget to subscribe for instant disappointment, and I'll see you guys soon. Bye!